why certain diets work and why certain diets don't work, and what you would need to do to really find a sustainable path for long-term weight loss. Welcome to episode 53 of In the Grand Scheme of Fitness.
Ooh.
I'm your host, Justin Schollard, along with my co-host,
Ethan Wolf.
And today, folks, we're going to be talking about why certain diets work and why certain diets don't work, and what you would need to do to really find a sustainable, keyword there, sustainable path for long-term weight loss. Because like we were saying in the preamble here, is like, we're getting ready for the show, is like, listen, there's a million ways to lose 10, 20 pounds. Like you can lose, pretty much anyone can go and lose 20 pounds by a plethora of ways. Statistically, 90% of people gain all their weight back. Losing the weight really isn't the question. It's whether or not we're going to keep it off is the real question.
It's the yo-yo.
And so that's what we need to talk about today. In today's episode is just like laying the groundwork of like why these things don't work, and then practicing patience and just being more process oriented in a few areas, so we can really basically guarantee you're not just going to become a statistic and gain all your weight back, right?
Yep. 100%.
You were telling me about your friend who's on his own little journey right now.
Yeah, I was just talking, and he just was wanting to lose weight, and he's not particularly obese or anything, and he's a vegetarian. He's not vegan. He's a vegetarian.
The worst.
And his just method is to just only eat one meal at the very end of the night, and just to drink like juices.
So it's just juicing all day, and then just having one big
meal in the evening.
Vegetarian meal at night.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah. And he likes to get stoned, and so sometimes there's like ice creams and things, and I think it's
vegan, bro. It's fine.
He's just trying to figure out his way, and so his goal, I mean, he has a calorie number in mind at least, which was 1,500 calories, which I was like, that to me is unsustainable. As an active musician, I just don't think you're going to survive on that.
No. I mean, like, so I'm imagining like maybe 3 or 4 glasses of juice. Like, we're talking vegetable juice, talking like orange juice, like what?
I think he's like doing like some type of like bottled, like a pressed juicery.
So like 100 calories a bottle,
probably
maybe?
About 100 calories a bottle, yeah. And then he knows he needs to get his like protein up, and so he was asking what he should do, and I was like, well, in your case, if this is what you're going to choose to do, I was like, either way, you need to start taking a protein supplement.
Yeah.
Like pea protein isolate. Like, I don't really care.
Right.
You can technically drink away because he's not vegan. He eats eggs and cheese. So
he's a lacto-ovo.
A lacto-ovo. But I was like, really, you should just have like 2 or 3 of those a day, no matter what, because I don't think you're probably ingesting enough protein, whether you're doing this or otherwise. It's going to just help you so much.
Almost guaranteed you're not gonna.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just say,
satiate you.
Like our last episode, you got to get 150 grams of protein a day in.
Yeah.
On average for men, give or take.
Yep.
You're not going to get that in one dinner.
No.
That'd be an awful experience.
Especially like a pasta
that.
dinner, or like even if it's lentils, it's just not.
He needs
happen.
to be dosing. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I think the reason I wanted to have you mention that again is just because like that's typical. Maybe not that exact method, but I think it's just these like very extreme versions of the general population lands on.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like, okay, there's like a simplicity to it.
Yep.
I don't have to like try very hard. I just don't eat until dinner. And it's like, listen, like we said, there's a bunch of ways to lose 10 or 20 pounds, and that's one of them.
For sure.
Will this guy lose 20 pounds in 6 to 8 weeks doing that? Probably.
Yeah.
But here's some things that maybe we haven't considered. A, he's not having enough protein, probably not weight training, right?
No, definitely not.
Yeah. So you're not weight training. You're
does
eating
some like elliptical, but he's
so again, like, that's not going to keep any muscle on you.
No.
So there's no weight training. There's maybe you're consuming 20 to 30% of the protein you should be, and you're in such a crazy deficit, like 1,500 calories for like a grown ass man.
Even if you're not doing resistance training, it's low. Yeah.
That's low for most women. That's still considered pretty low.
Yeah.
So it's like he could probably be closer to 2,000, still lose weight. Point of all that is that he'll lose weight as an aggregate. The composition of the weight he'll lose is probably, unfortunately, going to be a pretty even split between fat and muscle, maybe like 60-40 fat to muscle. Had he gotten his protein levels up and done some weight training and not have such extreme deficit, he could manipulate this weight loss, the composition of this weight loss, to favor retaining more muscle tissue and just peeling off fat.
Might take a little longer, but
it's what we all want.
Yeah, and he's gonna see the goal of his 20 pounds on the scale. And then I don't know what the end game was. I asked him, and he was like, I'm not sure at that point. And I had the exact conversation with him. I was like, well, you realize that as soon as you stop this very particular pattern that you're in, you know, what's going to be the different course of action that's going to prevent you from getting back to where you are right now, starting this.
It's just this vicious loop that everyone... It's like that is yo-yoing. It's like you drop the yo-yo. Oh, I need to do something. Take action. You know, some crazy diet. You hit this trough where it's like, I've lost 20 pounds, but this isn't sustainable. And then the yo-yo comes back up. Yep. And then enough time passes where we forget about the thing that didn't work and we do some other amalgamation of it, you know? And that's why these diets don't work. And it's like, well, if we cut out carbohydrate, if you go on a juice cleanse, if you go ultra low calorie, if you
cut out carbs
or like whatever. Yeah, it's like,
or only eat for 6 hours a day, or
like extreme intermittent fasting. Like I think the litmus that everyone has to go through is before you decide on a diet,
right,
ask yourself, can I see myself doing this for 10 years? And if the answer is no, like if you're like, I can't imagine a life where I'm not eating carbohydrates for 10 years. You know,
it's like...
So it's like, do the means justify the end? Knowing that statistically 90% of people, 9 out of 10 people who lose any sort of weight tend to gain it all back.
Yeah.
So we know the statistic. We know that people are plagued with these, you know, shiny object sort of fad diets. So it's like, you just got to ask yourself, okay, is this realistic? And chances are you're going to say, no, it's not.
Yeah.
And that's why most people stuck are not.
most people stuck.
Most people are stuck.
No fat loss.
Most people stuck. Most people are stuck is what I should have said in this like vicious loop, this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that question is actually probably the most important question, because if you're the kind of person that tracking your calories is not something you can see doing for 10 years, but a 10-hour or 8-hour intermittent fasting window maybe that is the answer for you. If that's a form to create caloric restriction. If it's just that's how your brain works, and you're just like, I get the 8-hour window, it works for my work schedule, it's just easier to not eat breakfast or whatever it is. Pending you play your cards right in that window, maybe that is the answer. But I think most of the time, the rigidity of anything is going to create a shorter timeline. You know, and there's a certain rigidity to intermittent fasting. So I think inevitably you're eventually going to break. But again, that could be the right answer for somebody. And I think that particular avenue or tool is a little bit more of a good tool than something like not eating carbohydrate. I think it just often eliminates a meal out of a day from somebody that might eat more meals than they would before, and therefore just puts them in a caloric restriction.
Yeah, it's a form of caloric restriction.
Yeah, that's
and like
all it is.
You know, in case you guys haven't picked up on it, I mean, like the only way that any diet works is because in some way, shape, or form it got you to restrict your calories.
Yeah.
So don't fool yourself. It's not because of the type of mushroom they put in your special blend. It is because in some fashion, for a long enough period of time, you ate less than what your body burned. And so you filled that energy deficit through body fat burn, right? Yeah. That's pretty much the gist of it, right? You know, I think that's a good segue to, well, then what would work, and why, you know, how do we not become a statistic, and how do we not become the, you know, 90% who do gain it all back? And we have to look at each facet of, you know, weight loss in general, and then like really just like the composition of one's body in particular, and making sure that we're not just like losing a ton of muscle mass and cutting too deep on the calorie restriction, or doing something too extreme. Like, gosh, I can't tell you how many people are like slowly just kind of find themselves in this place where they're waking up at 6 and running 5 miles and not eating carbohydrates and eating like ultra low, 1,200 calories, and then like they just burn out.
Yeah.
And they just quit, and they just can't stand it anymore.
And all of a sudden you're cranky all the time.
Yeah, your life is miserable.
Fuck this.
And then it becomes almost like a post-traumatic stress disorder where the only association that you have with weight loss is these like traumatic
point.
events. And so you avoid it until you just can't stand the way you look anymore. And you just go, so it's like, I can't stand being like this. I can't stand the things it takes to get rid of it. Like, and that's just this like terrible place that so many people find themselves in. And so, you know, and so I think like the big thing is not my big thing is accuracy is important. And what accuracy does, and when I say accuracy, I mean specifically like, okay, you got to know, like you got to have a starting point.
Yeah.
How many calories do you need, right?
That's what I was going to say, yeah, without some numbers to shoot off of.
Yeah, like if you're just saying, oh, I'm just only going to eat 1,500, it's like, well, what if I told you could actually eat 2,000, which is essentially a whole other meal, and still lose a pound of fat a week? Would you still be happy with that? Yeah, great. Well, then let's do that, because it's like analogous to saving money. It's like, I want to buy a car, so I'm going to put 50% of my paycheck away. It's like, okay, well, your expenses are 75% of your paycheck.
Right, so what's going to happen?
So if you put
there?
50% in, you're going to run too big of a deficit. Your system's going to break. You have to pull your credit card back out and get in debt again because you cut too deep.
Right.
Very similar with nutrition. You cut too deep, the wheels start falling off, and you gotta quit. And you got to go back to the
you're
old
not
way.
going to stay on it.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's the truth of this, at least having some understanding of what your needs are so that you can start to have an understanding of what an appropriate deficit is. Because it's the same thing, like even if you're intermittent fasting, if you don't know what your actual caloric requirements are, you could still easily overeat your calories. And I think that to me also comes in with some understanding of food choices, understanding about macros and fat calories, and just starting to get a little grasp on what a meal in front of you looks like calorically. And a lot of that has to come from measuring or some way, but at least at that point, even if you're doing intermittent fasting, you can probably have a good guesstimate that your 2 meals aren't going to be, you know, outrageously over in what you need, and then therefore it's the easiest or the path of least resistance, which makes it sustainable for you.
Totally.
But even then, I still think you have to have some type of target.
You got to know.
You have to
Whether
know.
you choose to participate with it or not, you got to at least understand it.
Well, and that's because like even my buddy who was like, oh, I want to eat 1,500 calories. It's like, well, okay, that's definitely low enough to make you lose weight. But like, do you know? So you have this understanding of the concept that caloric deficit is required.
You chose a number.
But you chose a number, yeah. So you're kind of like, you're kind of on the path a little bit. But why that number? What was the reasoning? Was it to just lose it as fast as possible without withering into nothing? Is that then sustainable? Like,
right.
What's your plan? Are you going to use any numbers once you get off of it, or is it just for this one moment? So I think it's like, it was interesting because I could see the wheels turning, and I can see some conscious or informed choices, but just not informed enough as a whole.
It's like that you know enough to be dangerous to yourself. You know enough to get yourself in
like,
trouble.
I got to be in a caloric deficit. I'll eat 500 calories a day. That'll put me in a deficit. You're just like,
certainly will.
It certainly will.
Yeah. You know, and so I think just some like really easy frameworks is like, first just get a starting point going. An easy starting point would be something around the lines of like, for men, maybe if you times your body weight by 12, somewhere between 12 and 14, that will give you a ballpark of I think they say like 14 or 15 is kind of like your maintenance, right? So your body, like, okay, I'm easy because I'm almost exactly 200 pounds. So my body weight times 15 is 3,000.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, most TDEE calculators, which is just basically a way to measure approximate, I should say, how much your body burns based off of your age, height, weight, and then activity level.
Yeah.
It's always right around there, somewhere between 2,800 and
based on your activity level, right?
Based on my age, height, weight, activity level, somewhere between 2,800 and 3,000. So if I got multiple sources kind of all pointing around the same, window,
it's
probably pretty close, So that's like a starting point. Okay, great. So now you know like what your maintenance, and I think everyone kind of understands what maintenance calories means. It just, it maintains your body mass, and that's going to be relative. If you're 100 pounds, it's going to be a lot different than if you're 300 pounds, but everyone has a maintenance, right?
Yep.
So that's like your starting point. Your body weight times 14 or 15-ish. You can err on the side of lower if you're like a little bit more deconditioned. If you don't have a lot of muscle on you, maybe you could go like your body weight times 14.
Or if you're sedentary.
If you're more sedentary, yeah. But that's like a starting point, okay? And then from there, it's really simple math. And there's obviously more to it, but just to give people sort of like the basics, it's if you, like there are 3,500 calories in a pound of fat.
Yep.
Okay. So it stands to reason that if you are in a 500 calorie a day deficit, you're approximately burning around 3,500 calories a week, give or take. No one's perfect and everybody's body's different. I get that. But we're not all as special of a snowflake as we think we are.
Right. Yeah. Generally, that's what's going on.
That's kind of how it works. So if we're about burning the amount of calories every single week that are also in about 1 pound of fat, then we can stand to reason that we're going to be losing about a pound of fat, give or take, per week at a 500 calorie deficit. Okay. So for me, that's no problem, because if 3,000 is my maintenance, that means 2,500, I'm in a deficit. Easy. I can totally be comfortable.
Yeah, you could go through your day on 2,500.
But if someone's maintenance was like 1,600, that's going to bring them down to 11. That's kind of tough.
That is hard.
So we might need to intentionally slow the pace of your fat loss so that you're not in too extreme of a deficit. In that case, maybe we might need to be like, hey, let's just go into like a 250 calorie deficit per week, which would mean that you're going to burn about a half a pound of fat 250 calorie deficit per day, which would mean that you'd burn about a half a pound of fat per week. Not as fast, but the whole point of this this episode is sustainability.
Yeah.
So who cares? You lose 5 pounds in 8 weeks instead of 4, but it's something you can do every single week and not miss. And then in the course of a year, you're going to be right where you want to be.
You actually lose the weight.
And you'll do it in a way that didn't feel like you had to disrupt your entire life.
Yeah. Because if you took the fast route, that 1,100 calories, if you're a smaller individual,
it's rough.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's so easy to consume that in a couple meals and just be hungry. So it really comes, and it's just so interesting, because it's this whole the way diet's looked at is just always this on-off switch. Mm-hmm. It's just always like, well, I got the wedding coming up, what am I going to do?
Right.
I've got this, what am I going to do? And I think that maybe there's a time and a place to change things up and do something more extreme, but I also think it's really about, like everything else we talked about, like building a lifestyle of just paying attention to your food.
Yep.
And you might have to go into a deficit to get to a place, but then you can eat in maintenance and just not have to worry. Mm-hmm. It's almost like you got to get to a place where your yo-yo is allowed to be like 3 pounds. Like your weekly yo-yo, or is like a 3 pound yo-yo. So
I totally agree with that.
Maybe you go up a couple pounds, maybe you go down a couple pounds, but you're in a range as a whole that doesn't bother you for whatever reason that you want to be at a certain place. Or for health or aesthetics or otherwise,
Yeah, I always tell people that, where it's like be as strict as you can for the first couple of months. Let's just get there faster. I want you to think of fat loss as like jail.
Yeah.
How do we get out of jail sooner than our sentence? With good behavior. Mm-hmm. How do we extend our sentence in fat loss jail? Bad behavior. Naughty weekends.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, just get there quicker. Just get that first 20, 30 pounds off. Take 2-3 months, go dark, put your blinders on, and just do it. You're not going to regret it. Trust me.
Right.
Because then once you get past that elimination phase, accuracy phase, commitment phase, then we can kind of go into this like reintegration phase. Okay, you got the 20, 30 pounds off. You've gone through like this period of analysis where you really start to see and understand now, this is how much calories are in that, and you've done it. 2 months of your life, big whoop, Right. But you just go there, get it done, and then you can kind of let off the reins a little bit and start to reincorporate some of your favorite things in. But what I say to your point is, like, let's just say you're 200 pounds and you really want to lose 50 pounds.
Right.
If you celebrate too soon, let's say you're really good for a couple of weeks, and like, voila, you pull off like 7 pounds. You're like, oh my God, it's working.
Yes.
Let's celebrate. And you go out and have like a couple slices of pizza and some wine and some fries.
I already lost 7 pounds.
And a cupcake. And then you plop and you shoot up 3, 4, 5 pounds in water weight. That's like 80% of your results that took you 2 hard weeks of effort that you eliminated in one night out or one full weekend out.
Yeah.
Versus we go a hard 2-3 months. Let's just get like 80% of the way to your goal, which for most people, barring folks who have like extreme weight loss, but if we're looking like 40, 50 pounds, you can get a good bit of the way there in a few months of hard work.
Yeah.
Because now, let's say now you're down to like 170, 160, And now it's like you have the occasional weekend out and you might pop up a few pounds, but it's only like 5 or 10% of a weight increase from what you've already lost versus it being 80% of the weight you lost because you celebrated too soon.
Yep.
So like commit to getting there first. Now don't mince my words here. That doesn't mean extreme. It doesn't mean unsustainable. Still the 500 calorie deficit.
Yes.
And still like sustainable exercise, but just be accurate.
It's just more time, I think. It's more being disciplined with the accuracy for longer period of time to get to that goal.
Totally.
Before you can kind of start to understand, because it's the truth of what you were saying before. It's like when you actually have that accuracy period, you start to realize like, oh, if I eat this kind of cookie versus this kind of cookie, it's a huge caloric difference, but they might satisfy my cravings for a cookie the same way.
Yep.
Like, oh, rice crackers have no fat, and I can get a bag of rice crackers from Trader Joe's for a snack versus if I eat potato chips. Mm-hmm. There's so much fat in them. There's so many more calories, and I can fundamentally have a handful of rice crackers that psychologically satisfies me, and it's a quarter of the calories, you know. And so I think what happens is like you learn how to maneuver and you learn how to get through things, and then you can kind of take that knowledge with you.
The art and the science of it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, healthy swaps is, you know, that's like what we're talking about here. Like, tell you what, like. You just make a switch to from like full fat yogurt and cheese to like low fat yogurt and cheese. Mm-hmm. Calories are cut in half.
Yeah.
The protein tends to be a bit higher, believe it or not. And I'll be damned if you could tell me the difference.
You know,
it's fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
And like making those like reduced fat or reduced calorie, reduced sugar swaps across all of the little things you do during the day. That right there could be your 300 to 500 calorie deficit, and nothing in your life actually changed except you just went to like diet soda, reduced fat cheeses, reduced fat mayo, lower sugar ketchup,
like carb savvy tortillas.
Instead of it being 150 calories for a tortilla, it's only 70. Mm-hmm. It's like 80 calories make or break a person's journey. No, but times 8 things throughout the day. Wow, now that's basically a whole calories worth of meal.
Yeah.
That you've been able to find ways to maintain your experience or with food by just being a little bit more nuanced and clever about your choice. That could be it right there. You know,
talk about sustainability.
Yeah,
you know,
right?
Don't change much, just change choices of what.
It's wild. It's wild. I mean, even like the Halo Top ice cream.
Oh, dude.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And it's like the whole pint's 300 calories. A typical pint of ice cream is 1,000.
1,200, yeah.
1,200 depending on
it's
what
basically
kind.
a quarter pint.
So, you know,
if you get a good ice cream, if you get like a nice full fat, like a Haagen-Dazs, or you're going to Jenny's or any of those places, definitely 12.
And people will eat a whole pint, man.
Oh, I have many times eaten a whole pint in my life.
I mean, it's like you just find yourself just going in.
It's a little melted. Like, it's just going down easier.
Totally. But, you know, you get like a Halo Top, and it's got 16 grams of protein. The whole pint's only 300 calories.
That's wild, yeah.
And it's pretty darn good. And it's like...
all things considered.
You know, like you could eat... Any person on the earth could budget a few hundred calories a day for their little dessert. And you get to hammer an entire pint down and get an extra 16 grams of protein.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I even have a client who makes like a whole, like, his own like dessert out of protein powder and all this kind of stuff, and it's like 60 grams of protein, and he just like loves it. He just can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
You know, and he has to make it. It's like you blend up some stuff, put it in the freezer.
Like the Ninja ice cream it's all trending online now.
No, I don't know what that is.
It's like, you know, people are like throwing like, you know, a banana protein powder and some like chocolate chips, and they're whipping up this like ice cream with some yogurt in there. And
I think that's what exactly it is. I think it's like Greek yogurt protein powder, some chocolate chips, maybe like a little itty bit of peanut butter powder.
Yeah.
Or, you know, all this kind of stuff. And he's like this huge serving, 60 grams of protein.
Wild.
He's like, I get to eat the whole thing. He's like, it's more protein than like dinner sometimes.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like we talk about the art of it all, right? So with any sort of skill acquisition, you got to understand the fundamentals. Like you can't break the rules until you learn them, right? And so it's like, you just got to learn the fundamentals. And the fundamentals is just how many calories does my body need? How much protein should I eat? And then just go there and be accurate. And it's okay if your food choice is a little more limited in the beginning, but then like you start to expand your repertoire. You start to like build your network of like, oh, this cookie versus that cookie. Oh, Quest chips have protein in it. Reduced calorie ice cream actually doesn't taste too bad.
Right.
Sugar, like Coke Zero, tastes almost identical as regular stuff. And then all of a sudden your network just starts to expand, your repertoire, and you just build this like life around making these better choices to give you all this indulgence and satisfaction, but still keeping your calorie ceiling where it needs to be. Going back to like the money analogy, it's like, well, maybe like, you know, if like you're trying to save money and you keep finding yourself like buying like name brand designer stuff and all it, but it's like you just go one layer deeper and you find like, oh, there's like the whole secondhand market that it's just as good, but it's a third of the price.
Yeah.
And I can get that. I can get everything I need, you know? And it's just like, it takes just an extra layer of investigating, but like you could have everything you want and keep it in your budget, you know, period.
And make it long term. Make it 10-year long term.
And that's sustainability. Like find me someone, show me someone who is eating everything they want and is completely satisfied, who's telling me it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just probably a lack of information that's keeping your attempts at dieting unsustainable, you know, but going
push
deeper.
Come to shove. Yeah. I agree with that.
So I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that covers it.
Episode 53 on In the Grand Scheme of Fitness. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Well, these ones always get me pretty fired up. I don't know. This is what we do, you know, like you guys, this is the conversations I have with real people all day long. And like, you know, you got to find that angle of attack that makes this real for people.
Yeah. I guess we'll get that like crowbar edge under the lip.
100%. Yeah. So we'll check you all next week for another episode 54 coming at you. Peace out, everybody. Bye-bye. Peace.